8 words. That is all it took to stop the NASCAR World Cold on Sunday, May 10th, 2026, at Watkins Glen International. Bus, I'm gonna need a shot. No screaming, no panic, no desperate plea for help. Just a calm, measured voice cutting through the radio static at 130 miles per hour, asking for a doctor, and then going completely silent. The man who made that call wasn't pulling over. He wasn't waving the white flag. He wasn't done. Kyle Busch, two-time Cup Series champion, owner of 63 career wins, was locked inside a scorching cockpit, battling something tearing him apart from the inside, and he chose to say absolutely nothing else about it. 38 laps later, he crossed the finish line in 8th place, the best result of his entire 2026 season. This is the story nobody was telling loudly enough. Before that radio call ever happened, it is worth understanding exactly where this race was being run, because Watkins Glen International does not forgive weakness. This is not an oval where momentum carries you through discomfort. This is a 2.45-mile road course demanding constant physical input, lap after lap, for 100 laps and 245 miles of race. The circuit features a 141-foot elevation change that punishes the body on every pass through the track. 7 turns generate significant lateral G-forces that compress the driver sideways, race after race, minute after minute. The cockpit heat builds relentlessly over hours of competition. The braking zones are so aggressive that drivers have described them as feeling like pressure being applied directly to the face from the inside. At NASCAR, Dwaxman pointed out directly, Watkins Glen elevation changes plus sinus pressure equals nightmare. This is the environment Kyle Busch drove into on May 10th, already compromised before the green flag ever dropped. He started 21st, patient, methodical, working through traffic with the precision of a driver who has been doing this at the highest level for nearly 2 decades. By stage 2, he had clawed his way inside the top 5. For a man sitting 24th in the championship standings during a contract year, this was not just a good day unfolding. This was a necessary one. The momentum was real. The pace was undeniably there. And then, calm as a man ordering coffee, the radio crackled. Can somebody try to find Bill Heisel? He's the kinder doctor guy. Tell him I need him after the race. Please. Bus, I'm gonna need a shot. That was it. No follow-up. No explanation. No indication of how serious the situation was inside that car. Dr. William Heisel, Busch's personal physician, was being summoned. And critically, Busch asked for him at the bus, his personal motorhome in the garage area, not at the car. That is a deliberate choice. That is a private request. It tells you everything about how Kyle Busch operates. Whatever was happening physically, he was not about to make it a public spectacle. He was going to finish the race first and deal with the rest later. Fox Sports commentator Mike Joy confirmed on the television broadcast that Busch had been dealing with a sinus cold throughout the entire week leading the race. But a sinus cold at home on your couch is a completely different animal from a sinus cold inside the cockpit of a NASCAR Cup Series car at Watkins. The 141-foot elevation chain, the relentless G-forces pressing against the skull, the heat building in the cabin. Every single one of those factors transforms a manageable illness into a physical crisis at racing speed. At Fan Racing Online captured what everyone watching was thinking. Dude is still running top 5 while sick. And that is precisely what made this moment so unsettling. At the teardown, who nailed the most unsettling part of the whole moment. The scary part isn't the doctor request. It's how normal Kyle Busch made it sound. A champion mid-race, inside the top 5, dealing with a medical issue serious enough to require an injection, and the only tell was 8 words delivered in the same tone you would use to ask someone to pass the salt. Neither NASCAR nor Richard Childress Racing confirmed anything beyond a sinus cold, and that silence from the team speaks louder than any official statement ever could. What happened after that radio call is where the real story lives. Kyle Busch did not lift. He did not back off. He stayed in the car, continued racing, and kept pressing forward. With 38 laps remaining and the field beginning to make strategic decisions, lap 61 produced the pivotal moment of the race. Joey Logano cut his left front tire, leaving the carcass on the backstretch and bringing out the caution. The vast majority of the field chose to pit under the yellow, Busch and his RCR teammate, Austin Dillon included. Race leader and eventual winner Shane Van Gisbergen made the bold call to stay out. That decision flipped the race dynamic entirely. SVG was now ahead on track with fresh eyes on worn tires, while Busch and Dillon had fresh rubber but the burden of fuel conservation for 38. The math was brutal and simple. Make the fuel last to the finish, or lose positions you cannot afford to surrender. Dillon managed his fuel carefully. Busch did not. He pushed harder. He got himself up to 5th place late in the going, sitting right behind Chase Briscoe, hunting for the aggression cost him. In the final 2 corners of the race, the number 8 Chevrolet sputtered and ran out of fuel. He dropped from 5th to 8th by the checkered flag, surrendering 3 positions in the final moments. We ran out of fuel at the end of the race, but we're still going home with our second top 10 finish of the season, Busch said in his post-race release. I'm proud of the work the entire Richard Childress racing team is putting in back in Welcome, North Carolina, and we'll look to continue that momentum as the season progresses. 8th place, best finish of 2026, earned while fighting a medical issue serious enough to require a post-race injection. At Steven Taranto called it directly, that was probably Kyle Busch's grittiest drive in years. To truly understand what Watkins Glen meant, you have to understand what the 2026 season had looked like before it. 63 career Cup Series wins, 2 championships. Kyle Busch is statistically one of the most complete talents the sport has ever produced. The record is not debatable, and yet, entering Watkins Glen, he sat 24th in points with just 2 top 10s across 12 races. He had 0 wins in over 100 starts, 7 finishes of 20th or worse. He had led just 19 laps all season long. Those numbers prompted a significant organizational decision. Before Texas, Richard Childress Racing made a quiet but meaningful crew chief change, removing Jim Pullman and installing Andy Street in his place after Busch's 10th place finish at Talladega Superspeedway, the first real flicker of something positive in an otherwise difficult season. Those moves do not happen when everything is going well. The physical toll of 2026 did not begin at Watkins Glen either. Back in January 2026, a stool collapsed at home. Kyle Busch suffered a deep leg laceration requiring 24 stitches and hours in the emergency. Days later, he qualified on pole at Daytona. That sequence alone tells you everything about the man's threshold for pain and his refusal to let physical circumstances become excuses. Then came Texas Motor Speedway. Busch was running inside the top 10 on the white flag lap when contact from John Hunter Nemechek sent both drivers backward. He dropped to 20th. NASCAR investigated the incident, reviewed telemetry, and NASCAR VP Mike Ford stated on record that Busch was turning the wheel all the way left just to go straight, confirming significant steering damage had occurred. The ruling came back. No penalty, inconclusive, likely unintentional. But the damage to his championship position, at Eric Estep 17, said what the results were already suggesting. Feels like every Kyle Busch race now carries career implications. The Texas incident had barely settled when the conversation moved somewhere far more serious, because Kevin Harvick had already spoken. On Speed with Harvick and Buxton, unprompted Cup Series champion, peer, and one of the most respected analytical voices in NASCAR, delivered a statement that landed like a weight across the entire sport. It's a contract year for Kyle Busch. I believe this is probably realistically maybe the only spot he has to still have a seat in the sport. And then the 8 car, if not the only spot, is probably the best spot for Kyle Busch. Well, Buxton's reaction on camera said everything that words could not. Let that statement sit for a moment. A fellow champion on national television saying plainly that Kyle Busch, 63 wins, 2 titles, one of the most decorated drivers in the history of the sport, may have 1 seat left in entire Cup Series. Not 1 good seat. 1 seat, period. Busch is 40 years old. The sport is getting younger at a rapid pace. RCR has been one of the most disappointing organizations of 2026 by any measurable standard. Sponsor decisions are being made right now behind closed doors, in rooms where past championships carry only so much weight against current results. At Race Day Nation responded with what the fan base was. Feels like we're watching the final chapters of an all-time NASCAR career. His contract, announced in May 2025, runs through the end of 2026. That is not a comfortable multi-year security blanket. That is a 1-year runway, and half of it is already gone. When both Dillon and Busch crossed the finish line inside the top 10 on May 10th, It marked the first time Richard Childress Racing had placed two drivers in the top 10 in the same race since the Chicago Street Race the previous. It was the first time Dillon and Busch had shared a top 10 finish since Texas Motor Speedway in April 2024, 75 races. SVG's winning drive put the result in perspective. Van Gisbergen made up 29.2 seconds on race leader Ty Gibbs in just 18 laps. An extraordinary benchmark of what elite road course pace looks like in the current Cup Series. Against that standard, RCR's double top 10 was a genuine organizational achievement and a sign that work being done back in Welcome, North Carolina was beginning to show results. "We work really hard on these road races," Dillon said after the race. "I put a lot of effort into them to get better." For Busch specifically, the result moved him 2 positions up the standings to 24th, still 66 points outside the provisional chase cut line, but with a foundation to build from. At Kelly Randall placed it in the correct team context as well. RCR needed this run badly. Kyle Busch needed it even more. Post-race, Busch handled the medical questions with the same dry, unshaken delivery he brought to the radio call itself. "Just a sinus thing. Needed a shot to knock it out. Nothing dramatic. I felt worse." His wife Samantha Busch confirmed it on social media. "He's fine. Just needed that shot to kick the sinus stuff. Appreciate all the love." And on his own Twitter, Busch kept it equally measured. P8. Really solid day. Had a T5 car. Just ran out of fuel on the last lap. Definitely headed in the right direction the last couple weeks. At Couch Racer's shop, put it even more bluntly, the man was asking for medical help and still driving like a psycho into the bus stop. That description, stripped of its color, is factually accurate. Kyle Busch received a medical injection after the race to treat a sinus condition serious enough that he felt he needed a doctor present immediately upon exiting the car. He did that while finishing 8th in a 100-lap road course race at one of the most physically punishing venues on the entire Cup Series schedule. At Jeff Gluck landed the definitive take. "You can question results. You can question RCR, but nobody can question Kyle Busch's toughness. The historical parallel is real and unavoidable. Every all-time great in NASCAR history has faced this exact moment. Earnhardt, Petty, Gordon, Johnson, the moment where undeniable talent collides with the cold mathematics of age and results. The moment when the sport begins to move on, whether the driver is ready or not. Kyle Busch is standing at that crossroads in 2026. The difference, at least at Watkins Glen, is that he is not arriving at that crossroads passively. At Track Pass added the statement that many in the paddock quietly agree with: a healthy Kyle Busch still belongs in competitive equipment, period. That qualifier, healthy and in competitive equipment, carries the full weight of what 2026 is actually. The numbers on paper do not capture a driver bleeding through a leg injury in January and putting the car on pole at Daytona days later. They do not capture a driver battling a sinus infection severe enough to require a post-race medical injection while outrunning drivers half his age on the most physically demanding road course of the season. At NASCAR Fan 17 said, "I don't care what anybody says. Prime Rowdy still flashes sometimes. He is not coasting. He is not managing a graceful exit. He is fighting visibly and painfully week after week for his place in a sport he has spent his entire adult life inside." The answer to how this story ends is being written race by race, lap by lap, and nobody, not even the people making decisions behind closed doors right now, knows yet what the final chapter looks like. "Bus, I'm going to need a shot." 38 laps. 8th place. Best finish of 2026. Kyle Busch will not go quietly.